So, guys, I want to talk about AEW, and there's this YouTuber called Toontown Wrestling. I really love his stuff, and he was doing a video about doing a podcast with a couple of his friends talking about what will make AEW profitable. So, I want to talk about that, and then some other suggestions. That the biggest thing that I hear is that they need to cut down the roster. That there's over 150 people on their roster. So, I totally agree with that because there's plenty of people that they're not going to use. There's plenty of people that they don't have a plan for, and then also too that. Definitely what happened with AEW was that they signed everybody, really, just because they wanted to come off as a company that's like, okay, well, Vince McMahon fired a lot of people during the pandemic. We're hiring a lot of people just because, we want to look bigger and better, really. And then there's also that thing, too, about them acquiring ROH, so they just want to also just, make sure they have everybody as well, really. So they have to kind of almost get out of that mindset of, this is the company where everybody has an opportunity. I mean, there are people with opportunities, but if it's so many people, they're not on television, like Sonny Kiss having a match at every 500 days, that's just not, then what are you going to do with Sonny Kiss anyway? He's better off when he went into TNA wrestling, really, so you have to learn to trim the fat. And then in addition, the other issue with that is that Tony's a really nice guy, so he may be like, okay, you know what, if he hires somebody and they have 5 years on their contract, he may be like, okay, he'll sit at home for 5 years and let it, wear out, instead of just saying, okay, well, this is not working, we need to do some budget cuts right now, because why should I be paying, if I have no plans for you for the next, 5 years, why should you be, your contract's $100,000, but you can sit at home for $500,000. Your contract's $500,000, you can sit home at $100,000. Why should he be paying for people to do nothing, really? So I do agree with that. But the next thing that they talked about is prioritizing big men, and I do agree with that. I think, as everybody said, that obviously professional wrestling is inspired by the Greek Roman Colosseums, Greek Roman Colosseums. The big man, the superheroes type of thing, as they said, and I do agree with that. It's just like what people say about Brian Cage, that he's honestly always going to job, really. I know, he works hard, he cares about his paycheck, but somebody like him should be the ROH champion or in the upper echelon, really. But no, he's somebody that loses all the time, really, and usually loses to smaller people, or he's kind of like that. He's kind of in the Samoa Joe role. Like in WWE, they always had Samoa Joe kind of lose a little too often, and that's with Brian Cage, really. But to an average person, Brian Cage, honestly, he looks a little bit like Zangief, from Street Fighter. He has that muscle and that bigger look. So, as people say, you want to go see the giant, the big among the big, really, and that's that adds some believability, really, and as people said, if you have a match of Danhausen versus Brian Cage, and you have Danhausen beat Brian Cage with doing magic and whatever, then people are going to say, okay, well, it's not believable, it doesn't feel that machismo. If it's like Brian Cage versus Powerhouse Hobb, big man versus big man, there's more appeal to that. Or if you do Luchasaurus versus Satnam Singh, big man versus big man, there's just an appeal to it. It's it goes down to human psychology. But if you do if you do something like Orange Cassidy versus Danhausen for the AEW championship, that doesn't have a lot of appeal. That doesn't feel larger than life, really. So definitely really prioritizing big men, I do agree with. And I also think that the booking of big men needs to be better in AEW for it to be profitable, because as I said, there's the believability aspect. And then the other thing that I would say with AEW is the number one thing is Tony Khan needs to give a shit. I think that he's very complacent. So he's probably not really going to care that much, and even if he gets a media rights deal and it's something like, okay, you're going to be losing, maybe $40 million a year, that's not a lot of money to him because he is a billionaire. So there has to be a sense of, we got to give a shit. We got to realize our full potential, really. And I also think the next thing I got to say is he needs a better chain of commands. I think that Tony Khan is one of two things. I think that he doesn't have the best, he doesn't have the best cabinet to say. He doesn't have the best, as I said, best cabinet president term, the best people to help him out with everything. And he may also be that person that he may want to do a little too much, really. So if you do a little too much, what ends up happening is that you can't get the best out of yourself really, because you can't really just like take a break, and you can't really do anything like that really, you know. So I'm sorry, my ghetto. Sorry, we still have a bunch of ghetto neighbors, you know. Just so I gotta just move a little bit. But yeah, but that's also the other issue, is that I think he's way too busy, and if a person is like way too busy, you know, how can they really do their best almost, you know, because yeah, how can they really do their best? Because obviously, you know, they're just too spread too thin, really. And I think the other thing I need to say is that there may be wrestlers that are better at being writers and bookers. Like I said, like to myself, like MJF, he has a very like cinematic mind, really. He's really good with theater and acting. You know, why not say, okay, if you're paying him that much money, why not do something like say, okay, MJF, you really should be producing ROH, or Bryan Danielson saying you want to be a part-timer, produce ROH and see what happens, really. That's the next thing that I would say, really. You know, if there's people like me who have done videos on storylines, what if he reaches out to me and says, okay, Byron, you know, here are two wrestlers. I'm going to allow you to work 3 or 4 months on a storyline, and I'm going to give you, you know, $10,000, and we're going to see what happens, really, you know. And I also think that's another issue, is that you don't have new people in the business, you know. Like, I have some, like, really good story ideas. And then there's also, like, some people out there that do have some good ideas. So it's like, who's actually writing the stories? You know, if it's the same people, or it's people that's not worked out, or the stories are kind of like a clusterfuck, really, you have to filter in new people. And that's going to be one of the issues in professional wrestling, is that you're going to get to a point where all the old school people who know the business very well are going to die, and there's going to be no like second generation of writers and all those people. So you have to kind of like really do that, and then find people that who are a little experimental and be like, okay, you know, well, you know, just like give me a chance, or give other people a chance. The next thing that I would say is that one of the most egregious offenses is that you need to treat ROH, Battle of the Belts, special shows like a big deal, really. Like, you know, you didn't really market, you really did not market ROH Supercard of Honor in WrestleMania country. So, you know, if you are paying, you know, $20 million or $30 million for ROH, and then you have all these wrestlers on there, and you don't even advertise ROH on your television show, like say, okay, well, ROH is a $9 subscription, and other things like that, or watch this match, or watch all this stuff, or even do like a match on like Collision or Rampage with ROH people, you know, then that's just a waste, because most people don't know about it. And then the other thing I'll say is that if you have ROH pay-per-views, like you want to make your Texas thing a big deal, you're not doing anything. You should be talking about it after Forbidden Door. You know, like Forbidden Door should be, you know, I would say, you know, 35% ROH, Death Before Dishonor, and 65% All In Wembley Stadium. And then, as I said, you should do something like say that whoever's the ROH men's champion and ROH women's champion is going to defend the title at Wembley Stadium. Imagine if Athena was at Supercard of Honor, and then she's like, you know, I want to defend my title with everything that I've been doing, really. You know, what would happen if they don't make that big deal? Well, I want to be champion to this. I worked so hard. And you know, usually you never know when that's going to end, really. Do I want all this to be worth it or not worth it? It's going to be worth it if I go to Ring of Honor, if I go to ROH. Or you look at something like Mark Briscoe, there are going to be people saying, okay, well, Mark Briscoe, you got this title because Christian could fight Mark Briscoe, and be like, okay, Mark Briscoe, you got this title because people feel sorry for you. So what if you make Christian the champion of Supercard of Honor, and then, you know, he's dissing Mark Briscoe, and then he says, like, then they have a match at Wembley Stadium, and then you have Mark Briscoe beat him, or you disappoint people and have Mark Briscoe lose, or you do something where even if you have Goldust actually want to hold the ROH title, just to have a championship, like do what you did with Cody, really. So the fact that they don't treat ROH like a big deal is an issue. In addition to that, with your Battle of the Belts, if I remember correctly, I think maybe only 1 or 2 times in Battle of the Belts, you're going to have Battle of the Belts 11. So 1 or 2 times you had Battle of the Belts, you had a title switch. But why should wrestlers want to be on Battle of the Belts or go after belts, really? If the show's not treated like a big deal, it's dream matches, and then also you're not really going to win. It's just like with what they say about the Royal Rumble. If you keep having people lose at WrestleMania, why would a wrestler in a storyline want to compete in the Royal Rumble, do all that work for nothing, really? So that's kind of been an issue with AEW, really. There's a lot of issues of it to be profitable, but if you want special shows to be special, you got to do that. Market ROH, market Battle of the Belts, have to have title switches. Do something, like I said, like just Super Card of Honor. Death Before Dishonor. You want people having good matches. You want to have people saying, you know what, if I can do this here, imagine what I can do at Wembley Stadium. I want to be on the Wembley Stadium card, because that's going to be historical to have 70,000 whatever people, and then also I want to be the champion at that time. Really, what would happen if you had Battle of the Belts? Really, and you had a bunch of wrestlers that are like, oh my god, I want to be a defending champion at Wembley Stadium, but I have to go through Battle of the Belts and deal with an opponent. What would happen if you have people that want to be champions at Wembley Stadium, and they know that the only way to do that is to win at Battle of the Belts? Really, you automatically gave you a storyline for Death Before Dishonor and Battle of the Belts. Really, so it's all that, really. I do think that the other thing too is that if you're going to do something that compelling, it does something to your Texas shows. If you bought a ticket for the ROH show or the Collision show, they're $55. So $65 to see all that stuff. If you had a compelling story with a lot of compelling drama and people want to be champions and want to go into Wembley Stadium as a champion, you're setting up like an Elimination Chamber, Road to WrestleMania type of thing, really. Then I think that would make people want to pay more than $55 to see all this stuff, really. So I really just, I really just hope that I really just hope Tony kind of takes some advice, really. But there's a lot of just talking points of how they can be profitable. And I just also kind of really say too, I think the last thing to say is that, Tony has to think like a businessman. I think that, as people said, he kind of thinks like, he wants to be the fun boss. And importantly in business, it's like what Machiavelli talked about. You need to be kind and cruel. If you're always cruel, you're slowly conquered Vince McMahon. If you're always kind, you're easily conquered Tony Khan or Dixie Carter. If you're kind and cruel, you're never really beatable. And that's like the WWE machine. Definitely there's people like Jim Ross. When I think Chris Benoit was injured, they paid him his full time, instead of his downside guarantee and other things like that, and charity work and other things, or they gave people some opportunities at certain points, really. But the point of it is, you got to have a business mindset. Tony Khan, I just don't think he prioritizes making money. I think that, as I said, what I really read from him is that he's an overworked person that thinks he can do everything, and he doesn't know how to kind of step away and then also have a chain of commands. And sometimes when you're in that mindset, you're going to have it is what it is attitude. It's like a parent that has their legs open and they have like 12 babies. The first couple of years they may have control over the kids, but as soon as they get more wild and hyperactive and out of control, they just are worn so thin they're going to let whatever happens, really, because they just really can't manage all that, so that's all I have to say, really. I think that, as I said, there's a lot that they can do, but they're not living up to full potential, and that's kind of the big thing that's hurting AEW. It can be profitable. I appreciate the advice that these guys have in that podcast, and definitely appreciate the extensions that I have upon it as well.